Scientists believe that an increase in wildfires in the Arctic Circle may be part level. The researchers say lightning strikes and human activity typhoon off the coast of Japan. The vessel was carrying around 6,000 head of cattle. One person has been rescued, as Shaima Khalil reports. Posts include roles for engineers and finance specialists, as well as for packers and other warehouse staff. The organisers of this year's London Marathon have said a slimmed-down event will take place on a circuit around St James's Park in London next month, featuring only elite athletes. The race had to be cancelled in April because of the lockdown.
Neil, thanks. Germany is consulting its NATO allies on how to respond to the poisoning of the Russian opposition politician Alexei Navalny. The Kremlin has rejected accusations that it was responsible, but Germany has said there is unequivocal proof that Novichok nerve agent was used, and Chancellor Angela Merkel said the world would look to Russia for answers. Mr. London, his widow Marina, has called for sanctions to be imposed on Russian officials.
People who benefited from this regime, they don't think about country, they don't think about people living in Russia. They do think only about their own pockets. And
you can hear Carolyn's full interview with Marina Litvinenko on PM this afternoon. So how should the West respond? Tom Tugendhat chairs Parliament's
of Montenegro to the use of Novichok in Salisbury. I mean, it's impossible not to add one and make two out of this. It's extremely clear.
So what should the West be doing?
We really do need to be standing together, and I have to say that's why Angela Merkel's comments in recent days have been so welcome, because Germany's acceptance of Nord Stream 2 has been one of the weak links in the West's arguments. We've effectively been giving privileges to Russian energy companies that they should not have.
And Nord Stream 2 is the pipeline that's running between Germany and Russia.
Well, it's more than that, actually. Nord Stream 2 is a project by the Russian government to undermine the alliance of Eastern European states, because what it does means that undermines not only those Eastern European states, but actually it undermines Germany too. So I think strategically this is a bad idea.
But the chances of Nord Stream 2 being ended now?
Siding with the Putin regime at home and then enjoying the benefits of the Western freedoms abroad. And we need to end this. We need to make it absolutely clear that we stand with the Russian people.
So what, that you're arguing for an extension of Magnitsky sanctions against individuals, against wealthy Russian oligarchs and businessmen?
Well, not an extension, an application. I mean, the law exists. We should be using it more actively. And I've been pressing Dominic Raab to look at putting them into application on many people who not only are in the UK and working with others. This is where working with the E3, Germany and France, and working with the wider
meters, turn
European Union, NATO, to make sure that these sanctions are applied.
This is an opposition politician. What do you think it says about the Russian authorities that, if it is them, they are prepared to do this on their own?
There's absolutely no doubt that this is conducted by the Russian state. This tells us that the Russian state is actively pursuing anybody who stands against Putin, a man who has robbed the Russian people and is said to have more than $300 billion in bank accounts around the world.
But what I wonder, is it a sign of weakness or of...
It is unacceptable to many of us, and I think that's why we've got to stand together on this, why it's very welcome that Angela Merkel has changed her tone towards Russia, and I hope very much she will also change her policies and things like Nord Stream 2.
Tom Tugendhat, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. In May this year, the climate scientist Mark Parrington tweeted satellite photos of northern Siberia. They showed hotspots emerging in the ice sheet that covered the ground. Those hotspots match the places where there had been Arctic fires. A catchy name for what is an old but rare phenomenon, holdover or overwintering fires. That's when a blaze is never fully extinguished, but smoulders all through the winter in the peat layer under the ice and reignites the following spring. Last year's summer fires in the Arctic Circle burned at such a rate that they produced record levels of carbon dioxide. to climate change. The Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service has just reported that CO2 levels from this year's fires were a third higher still than those records. It was Mark Parry...
Temperatures and then reignite at the surface when the environmental conditions change in the spring.
Okay. Is it possible that they have been happening, we just haven't...
To measure and detect them, it's very difficult to say. So we speculate because they're burning in places where we knew there were fires last year, and they're also occurring very early in...
result of them.
Yeah, well, what we measure, or the satellites measure, is the heat signal from the fires at the ground. And then from that heat signal, we're able to estimate here, and then we can see where that goes and how it might...
Of people, so they can really detect how many cases of the virus are out there every day, about 40. And the question is, how dangerous is it if you're one of those 40? And for someone who's about 60 years old, the risk of getting it might be about a 1% chance of dying. That might be a little bit too high, but that's about right. 1% of 40 in a million. Good. Then comes the problem. So when I discovered this, I thought, I wonder what else is about that risky. Epidemiologists, statisticians, they use a term called the micromort. A micromort is a 1 in a million chance of death. And I know there are lists of activities like what else is about a 1 in a